What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds with Joe. We are back on the bench with our 1/48 scale Airfix Spitfire Mk.XIV. Last time we went ahead and did a lot of work on the cockpit. We got all that nicely detailed. We got the seatbelts glued in. Today we're going to go ahead and try to mount the cockpit tub into the sides of the fuselage. Now last time we painted everything, we weathered it down just a little bit, so that's all ready for installation. Maybe work on the wings, and then we have to go ahead and cut off the wing tips. So we have a lot of work to do on that. Maybe get some nice cosmetic stuff done. I don't know for sure, but we have a lot to do today. So we're going to move forward. But before we get involved with that, I wanted to show you guys this. This is actually my reference material that I will be using for this particular Spitfire. This is a wonderful series. This is part 2, so it only covers the Griffin engine Spitfire. But as you can see, this book is chocked full of awesome information. It's got color profiles. It goes through all of the design and the manufacturing of every Griffin engine Spitfire, even into the Griffin engine Seafires as well. So this is a really, really interesting book. Plus, one of the nicest things here is in the very front, it has a whole foldout of plans, actual line drawings of all the different Spitfires in 1/48 scale. So that's really, really helpful. They also include a section geared towards us modelers with a nice detailed layout of a couple of different kits, kind of highlighted and showcasing all the different marks and makes that you can get out there. It also has a wonderful write-up on the current Spitfire that we are actually building. It goes through a lot of the issues that they had, a couple of changes that you might want to make it a bit more accurate. So overall, it is a really, really nice, helpful book. Plus, it's got this lovely spread out here of a Seafire that looks really, really enticing. I might want to go ahead and build something like that in the near future. But aside from that, this book has a ton of information, including different images and line drawings with detailed specs for all of the cockpits of all these different Griffin engine Spitfires. So that is hugely helpful, especially when looking at color, the amount of instruments that it has inside, the wiring. It's got so much information, guys. Plus, it has a whole section in the very back of the book that covers nothing but modeling parts, update kits, decal sets, everything you can possibly buy for some of these Griffin engine Spitfires. So an awesome book. If you love the Spitfire, check out this book. It is a real high point of my collection for sure. Can't recommend it enough. Anyway, let's get on back into it. So moving right along, everybody, we're going to go ahead and start off today with the fuselage and the cockpit. I want to go ahead and install the cockpit tub up into one side of the fuselage and then get that fuselage all nicely buttoned up. Now, if we want to go ahead and make a little bit of alterations, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and do that now. Problem is, I don't really know which version I'm building yet, so I don't really want to take off any plastic. It has an option here to remove a little section of that rear tail if you want to go ahead and put on the larger rudder. Now, I'm not sure if my version actually calls for that, so I'm going to hold off on that for right now, but we're going to move on and just get that fuselage more or less tucked together, get the cockpit up inside. Now, I have heard that one of the major issues is this fuel tank insert. I heard this is actually too small. The opening is a certain size, but then this fuel tank actually comes inside where it's supposed to, where it meets the fuselage. So that's going to have to be fixed. Not sure how to do that though, but we'll figure it out. Plus, we have options here to go ahead and open up a couple of locating tabs for a slipper tank, which I don't plan on doing. And we also have the wheel wells, as well as the different ribbing and spars we have to go ahead and glue in as well. We do have to go ahead and take off the ends of each of the top of the wing tips, and then we'll have to move on down to the tail, figure out which rudder we're doing, and then eventually install that and make any alterations. So lots to do here, guys, but I think for right now, let's go ahead and focus on the fuselage, cockpit installation, get those wings taken care of, get the tips sliced off, and then make sure that everything lines up nicely. This cockpit, of course, we already gave that a test fit. We know that it works perfectly, so let's go ahead and cue up that time lapse, move forward, try to get as much work done as possible, and well, let's just see how it goes. Let's do it. Alright everybody, we are back and the fuselage is nicely glued together and the cockpit is up inside right where it's supposed to go. So overall, I'm very happy with how this is turning out. But now we have to go ahead and move over to this front insert for the fuel tank. This is the real trouble here with this fuselage. This is what I've heard at least, and so far I will agree, this just doesn't fit quite right. Now it's actually a little bit too small for the opening. And you'd think coming up to this, Airfix would have made special attention to make sure everything was as nicely fitting as it was in the cockpit, but it just isn't. Now you really can't do much with it. You can try to kind of bend it and flex it out, and that would work to a certain degree, but it probably has a little bit of plastic muscle memory, so it's just going to pull itself back together. But if we start from one side, we should be able to kind of muscle it into place. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start on the right side. I'm going to go ahead and glue it down here along the bottom strip where the fuel tank fits with the fuselage. Once that is nice and cured, it should be stable enough to go ahead and stretch and kind of force the part over to the left side. Now when that's all dry though, we'll have to go ahead and reinforce those with maybe super glue or something like that. But I think if we start here on the right and get this nicely lined up where we want it and move on from there, I think we'll be in good position. Actually, just lining it up here on the bottom and the back of the seam lines, it doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of a gap though in the very front, so we might have to come back a little bit later and drop some Mr. Surfacer in there to really hide that seam. But for right now, let's just go ahead and focus on getting it in place. Now on the left side, that's the real tricky part because the right side is more or less lined up, but the left side now is too short. We have a little bit of this strip of plastic right in front of the axis door for the cockpit. That is not really glued down as neatly as I'd like it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and hold it into position. I'm going to use some super glue to go ahead and drop down into that seam. Not only will it seal it up, but it will also keep it in place, which means as long as this is dry, I can come back a little bit later and I can sand it down, taper everything in, and hopefully that should be enough to get this thing looking a little bit better. I'm really surprised at Airfix for including a part that doesn't quite fit very well. So far, everything has been absolutely beautiful. The fit of this one piece though, just a little disappointing. We're also going to take a little bit of super glue and run it around the inside of the seams. This way we don't have to worry about sanding it down. We also don't have to be as precise. We just want to go ahead and cover those seams and make sure that everything is locked into place. So we need to go ahead and put a little bit more super glue here to make sure to give it like double reinforcement because I don't want it coming loose. It's actually not too bad. The fit isn't great, but I've been able to kind of muscle it into shape and I think it's going to be passable. I think it's going to work. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more reinforcement here with super glue and we'll go ahead and move on. So I think what we're going to do now is as this cures, we're going to shift back over and work more on the wings. We do have a lot more work to do. We have to take off those wing tips. We have to really make sure that we know what we're doing with that and check the seams, check how everything goes together, and then eventually install the wings onto the fuselage. So we still have quite a bit left to do. But so far, aside from this front insert, we are looking pretty decent. So let's go ahead and jump back into that time lapse, continue pushing forward here, get the wings all taken care of, get everything glued together, and we'll see you back in just a little bit. Let's keep it going. All right, everybody, we are back and it's time to go ahead and finish gluing down the tops of the wings. Now I went ahead and sliced off the wing tips, and I'm not sure if this is how other people would do it, but I actually ended up canting my blade just slightly out towards the end of the wing tip. That created a little bit of a bevel sloping inwards to the center of the wing. I think that's actually a nice way to go ahead and get this done. So far though, the wings have gone together very, very well. There's not that big of a seam there at the wing joint, so I'm happy about that. We do have to go ahead and do a little bit of filling though, but it's not as bad as it could be for sure. And of course, like I mentioned, those wingtip inserts are actually not that bad at all. I was expecting them to be maybe too small and have a step there or something, but it actually feels like it's pretty even. So I'm happy about that. It's going to save me a bit of work. Now, I always get worried about slicing parts and altering parts here on a model, but Airfix has given me perfect directions and a nice prescribed line that I can follow. I'm going to go ahead and use some basic Tamiya Extra Thin because I'm not too concerned about it fogging the clear part because most of this is going to be painted. The only area that I want to make sure that I don't fog up too much is the wingtip navigation lights. Those will have to be painted a clear red and I think clear blue, but I think that should be fine. We don't need to worry too much about that. Like I said, a little bit of extra thin, let that capillary effect take hold, and we'll get this nicely glued down. But I think that's going to go ahead and call it quits for today, guys. I want to make sure that all these parts and pieces have dried and that we are looking stellar for the next episode. Next time, I want to go ahead and finish off the wings, so get those ailerons installed, and I want to work on the rear tail surfaces as well, at least the rear ailerons on and maybe the rudder. I have to go ahead and check my references and see what versions I'm going to be doing. And of course, we'll come back, we'll fill up those seams along the wing joint there. They're not too bad, like I said, but we will have to go ahead and fill them, and then we'll see where we go from there. But until our next episode, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to head over to Joe's channel, check out what he's got going on. Lots of awesome builds. He's doing the Spitfire with the wheels up and with the pilot inside, so that's actually going to be really, really awesome. Until then, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll see you back here on the next episode for the Airfix 148 scale Spitfire Mark 14. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.